Good evening, members, honoured guests, Alderman Dames. Welcome to this meeting of the Council at Parkside on Tuesday, the 26th of April, 2022. We'll start with the evacuation procedure. In the event of having to evacuate the council chamber, please leave by one of the 6 emergency exits around the sides of the chamber. Please assemble at the far side of the front car park nearest to the park entrance. Officers will be on hand to assist persons who require any assistance. Public recording of the meeting. There is legislation that allows the public to film, record, or use social media at a council meeting. This must not be disruptive to the good order of the meeting, nor include any filming or recording of the public seating area. Please switch mobile phones to silent. Microphones. Councillors and officers are reminded to use their microphones when speaking for the benefit of all present. The Reverend Kevin Ashby, please offer prayers.
Could I just say, first of all, this will be my last time leading the prayers this evening. What do you mean, hooray? I will be actually retiring, believe it or not. I'm a very retiring person and have been for years. I finish on Sunday. That's my final service. Anybody's welcome to come along at 10:30, particularly if I owe you money. You won't get it back unless you come to that service. And also to say that I will be around for a while. So if you do see me, it's not that I've decided not to retire. It's that until about June the 12th, I think I'll still be in Melton, but I will miss you. We're only going just up the road to Grantham. But I would like to introduce Pat Oliphant-Hayes. Oh, well done. I'm very impressed. Give her a round of applause. And Pat has said she's prepared to stand in and do the prayers in future and is an expert at it, having done it in a previous existence. So Pat, you're very welcome.
Thank you.
So shall we pray? Lord God, we give you thanks and praise for the freedom and safety in which we live, for peaceful homes, for justice and order in our society, for standards of truth and honour, and for all our rights and privileges. We pray for those whose work it is to maintain and extend these blessings, especially in this borough. All who have been given authority and responsibility among us in the work of this council, in administering the law and maintaining the peace, in education and the care of children, in planning and building, in providing both for work and for leisure. Direct and use their influence, that together each one of us might build communities and neighbourhoods whose life does honour to your name. Through Jesus Christ, our Lord. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you very much, Reverend Ashley. Apologies for absence. An apology for absence has been received from Councillor Steadman. I don't believe there's anybody else missing, so that means that we've got 27 members at the meeting. Item 2, Honorary Alderman Presentation Ceremony. It was decided at the extraordinary meeting of the Council on the 23rd of September 2021 that the title of Honorary Alderman would be conferred upon Mr. Gerald Botterill in recognition of his eminent service to the Council of the Borough of Melton from the civic year 1983 to 2019. Mr. Botterill, please may I invite you to take a seat at the front of the chamber. It's a long time since we've seen you this close up. Before we do the presentation, I'd like to invite members who wish to make any tributes to Mr. Botterill. Councillor de Bill.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Members, the conferring of the title of Honorary Alderman is to give recognition to a previous councillor who over a period of time has made a significant contribution to the council and to the community in which they served. Mr. Gerald Botterill is just such a man. He served his community as a member of his parish council for many years, and for several decades, yes, I said decades, as a respected member of the Borough Council. Many members will remember him from his membership of the Planning Committee. A quiet gentleman, a man not given to shows of flamboyance or self-promotion, a man who said it as he saw it, a man who didn't waste words. Members, notwithstanding that, Gerald's contribution to the town has been much more. I ask you to look back to the 70s and 80s, his earlier days as a councillor at Melton Borough Council. At that time, over 40 years ago, Melton Mowbray was a very different place. A thriving market town in the centre of a very productive farming community, where almost all the entire income came from agriculture. The cattle market was the hub. It was what made the town. It brought people and money in from the rural countryside. And it was that money which supported the prosperity of the town. It was what the town was built on, but things were beginning to change. As a farmer, Gerald recognised that things were changing, that if the town was to survive and prosper, the market had to evolve to reflect changing trends and patterns in agriculture, especially livestock sales. He became a borough councillor and, using his knowledge of farming together with others, played a major role in the redevelopment of the market. And it was that development that kept Melton Town and its rural community alive. It was a massive project for those times. Members, I believe that contribution alone should be sufficient for the recognition that we are bestowing tonight. But there's more. Even though Gerald is no longer a councillor and has stepped back from farming, his legacy, now run successfully by his son, is still working as a wonderful ambassador worldwide for the borough of Melton Mowbray. Members, the Crowse and Kerrill geese, some may not be aware, but the business that Gerald built during his years as a farmer at Crowse and Kerrill is famous across the world for his farm-produced geese. The business he built brings wealth to Melton Mowbray and to the borough as a whole, and it flies the great British flag across the world. The pictures of his geese on national TV and in the national press helped put Melton Mowbray on the map and draw tourists and others from all over the world to visit our rural capital of food. Members, if anybody is worthy of this recognition, worthy of this title, it's Mr. Gerald Botterill, a true gentleman, a gentleman whom I admire, respect and hold in great esteem, and who meets all the criteria, and who I know will continue to be an exemplary ambassador for the borough of Melton Mowbray. Thank you, Gerald.
Thank you, Councillor de Bill. Councillor Graham.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Gerald Botterill had already had 4 years on the council by the time I arrived, and I remember well my early group meetings upstairs in that Conservative club, where he and Jerry Green would puff away on their pipes, and I would have to take all my clothes and put them in the machine to wash them after every single meeting. I used to return home knowing absolutely nothing of what had been talked about, but knowing perfectly well, reeking of smoke. I had the neighbouring ward to Gerald, and as some of you know, I have never understood planning. I do not have many difficult applications, luckily, in my ward, but if anyone did occur, Gerald would always come and help me and discuss in his down-to-earth manner the intricacies of our application, and for that I was incredibly grateful. When I was leader, I had two main reasons to be really thankful. Firstly, it is hard to believe now, but changing, you will discover when it happens, changing the method of waste collection is actually a remarkably controversial act. And the introduction of wheelie bins was opposed by so many, especially the then editor of the Melton Times, who I did not have an easy relationship with. Gerald was on the Waste Management Task Group, and again, his calm, knowledgeable arguments gave me the confidence to pursue that introduction. Each leader needed a rock like Gerald to lean on for confidence. Secondly, when I became leader of the council after a short period of opposition, he rang me up the morning after my election and asked if he'd come and see me. That morning, over a cup of coffee, he explained to me how, without investment, our cattle market would die. What we needed was a new sheep shed. Because Gerald was someone whose judgment I had confidence in, we went for it, again, against so much opposition, A, from political opponents who claimed that because he was a farmer and knew what he was talking about, he should be banned from speaking on the subject. And B, the opponents also said that we should save money by having a smaller shed. Gerald is responsible for that large shed and thereby saved our market, as Ronnie has just said, one of the greatest assets in this council. Gerald was, I felt, the epitome of what a good rural councillor should be. He did not crave the limelight. His natural default was conservatism, but common sense took precedence. He was so respected by all the parish councils on his patch. He was a countryman who lived and worked in his ward, work that he loves. He runs an incredibly successful business and brought that knowledge to meetings. I cannot say that I always agreed with him, but I can say when we did not, we always agreed to differ. Whilst, of course, Gerald was always content and happy with that twinkle in his eye, he would always be the first to acknowledge that basically he was a family man and acknowledge the debt that he owed his son Richard and his late wife Anne and son Charles. To close, I would like to paraphrase a prayer. Let us this day rejoice in God, the author and giver of all good things, for all the beauty that he shows us in his England and its country parishes. Let us too give thanks for every form of healthy human activity and for the joy that men of goodwill working together for the good of the countryside find by their love of open air with horse and hound and rod and gun. May there never be wanting a succession of fit persons to live the rural life of England at its best. I think that when someone wrote that prayer, they must have been thinking of Gerald. And I congratulate you on becoming an alderman of the Borough of Melton.
Thank you, Councillor Graham. Councillor Holmes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Well, I have been a councillor for some time and it's all down to Gerald. Gerald said, come on then, you go for it. When Barry Garrigan, who sadly died, who was the leader of the council, he was a publican at Waltham. And somehow the Conservatives didn't want me. I don't know why, because we actually finished the last Young Conservatives in Melton. But anyway, never mind. But they didn't. So I stood as an independent, which I was glad to do. Anyway, and it was Gerald who actually said, well, nobody else will get in. You're bound to get in, Elaine, because you're known by everybody. Whether they like you or not, you're known by everybody. And he has always been a great help to me all over the years, as was his late wife, Anne. And also, of course, sadly, Charles, his son, who very unfortunately had that terrible accident. I just feel that this has been a long time coming, and I know it's been difficult because of COVID, but having been a friend of Gerald's for many years, but also I feel to be an alderman of the Borough of Melton is absolutely the most fitting thing that can be bestowed on Gerald. And thank you very much for everybody else that also wishes that that is the case. And thank you very much, Gerald, for everything you've done for the borough. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Holmes. Anybody else? Yeah, oh, yeah. Councillor Chandler.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would like to reiterate what's already been said. When I joined the council some 19 years ago, Gerald was always there. I was put on planning. And at that time, there was a signal about the planning committee. It was run by farmers, and you're yet another one to join the bunch. But Gerald always kept me on the straight and narrow. We have similar interests that I have to declare on everything of Beaver Estates, as Gerald always has done. And I think we've both kept a clean bill of health on with Beaver. they can be rather naughty and want to try and influence you, but we've both stood well away from them when they have tried to put influence on us. But I can only say, Gerald, thank you very much for the guidance you've given me over planning, and I wish you very well in the future, and it's a well-earned award that you're getting tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Chandler. Okay. Oh, hang on. Councillor Higgins.
Yeah, thank you. And just as Councillor de Bill said right at the start, I remember when we spoke all those times ago and with Councillor Gantz and a few others about bestowing this honour on someone who it's absolutely heartfelt of what people feel about Gerald Bottrell becoming an alderman of the borough, and much deserved too. And I think no one else can add more than what Councillor de Bill, Graham and Holmes have just said, so I'm not going to repeat that, but just on a personal story, and I think Councillor Charlie was saying this, is on planning. When I became a councillor in 2015, planning is very contentious. Anyone who served on planning, you're always going to upset someone. You're either going to give a planning permission or you're going to deny one, and there's always two sides to that debate. And I was a substitute at the time, and the few times I would come on as the substitute, and everybody would say you have to just listen to what's being said all the time. And Gerald gave the sound advice all the time, is just feel what it's all about and then make your decision. And whatever decision you come to, don't have a regret over it, but think about it before you come to that decision. And over time, I then became a member of the planning committee and very much enjoyed it as well. And with that, I remember Gerald's last few sessions on the planning committee. And one thing I do remember I said to him is the amount of times that I voted a particular way and Gerald voted a particular way, I don't think we very much deviated, but sometimes we probably came to things in a different way. And sometimes Gerald would come up to you and say, why did you vote that way? And you would say whatever it was, and he would come about it the way Gerald would come about it. And I think as Councillor Graham was saying, he knew the country, he knew the area it was all about. It's very much heartfelt and passionate. And one thing I will say is, for a new councillor at the time, Gerald was a very good mentor for me personally, and I know for many other councillors at the time of the 2015 intake. And while we say about pork pies and Stilton, I've always said the mantra that Melton is far more than pork pies and Stilton. And I think as going back to what Councillor de Bill said, pork pies, Stilton and geese. Well done, Gerald.
Thank you, Councillor Higgins. Councillor Illingworth.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This will be short, but nonetheless sincere. I had the great pleasure of serving with Gerald on planning committee for a number of years. Gerald didn't always have a lot to say and certainly didn't showboat, but whenever Gerald put his hand up to speak, it was always worth listening to. That's all I've got to say. Well done, Gerald.
Thank you, Councillor Illingworth. Is there anybody else? No. Would Gerald like to say any words before I present this?
Yes, thank you. Well, thank you all for your very kind words. But I really enjoyed being a councillor for many years. I never got tired of it. The only thing was that I was 84 and I didn't think I could go on much further, or not wisely anyway. But I had a tremendous amount of fun being involved with the council and working things out for people. You know, it's a real good life. It added on. I like to work all the time, actually. That's the only thing about me. But I like to be at a council meeting till 10 o'clock and it didn't bother me. And I'd be at work at 7 o'clock next morning. No one's been like that. But I enjoy what I do. And so I can plan accordingly. And it's given me a tremendous amount of satisfaction being involved with the council. And I hope everybody else that's on the council gets the same satisfaction as I do, because it was really tremendous and I really enjoyed it. Thank you so much for your kind words and all the very best in future.
It's an honour and a great privilege to be able to present this to you, Gerald, to confer upon you the title of Honorary Alderman.
Well, that's very kind. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Members. Thank you very much, members. On to the next item, item 3, minutes of the last council meeting. So Councillor Lawson will move and Councillor Graham will second the confirmation of the minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm very happy to confirm the minutes and move the minutes of the council meeting held on the 24th February 2022.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm very happy to second them.
Thank you very much. Councillor Higgins.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. While these minutes, I'm not looking to necessarily change them. There are some inaccuracies with it. I won't go into too much detail, but it sort of suggests that one councillor left the meeting, and I'm sure that you ejected them from that meeting. I do think that should be noted in the minutes.
Thank you, Councillor Higgins. The minutes are just a flavour of what I'm doing, reflect more about decisions than individual things that happened. Thank you, Councillor.
To be fair, Mr. Mayor, I have made my point and I'm okay with that. Thank you.
Councillor Cumbers.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, at that meeting, I spoke against misogyny and gave examples of unacceptable conduct. I believe that the examples should have been minuted, but they weren't. I know the minutes are not verbatim, but because those particular points weren't made, it's going to be my choice not to support those minutes. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, anybody else wish to make comment on the minutes? Okay, so we'll go to the vote. So all those in favour of the minutes, please raise. Obviously, the ones that were here. Just counting. Those against? Of course.
Thank you.
Abstentions for people that weren't here. Yeah.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I wasn't at the last meeting. Thank you.
Yeah, there's the same there, so that's 2 abstentions. So what's that? I'm just clarifying. Twenty-three, 4. Yeah. Okay, so there's 23 in favour, 2 against and 2 abstentions. Thank you very much. Move on to item 4, declarations of interest. If any member would like to indicate they have an interest to declare, would they please do so by raising their hands? And other registrable interest is in respect of county councillors Orson and Posner are taken as being on record for any matters which relate to the Leicestershire County Council. A member with a registrable or non-registrable interest must declare the interest in accordance with the code of conduct, whether they are able to consider whether they are able to take part in the debate and vote. So any other declarations of interest? Councillor Rawson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Well, my first disclosable interest is I haven't got my hearing aids tonight and I'm really struggling listening to people. So if everyone could just give that little bit of extra effort to speak into their microphone and be close to the microphone, it would certainly be helpful to me. But the main reason for stand is that I declare a personal and DPI disclosable personal pecuniary interest as a landowner in item 10, as is the start of a review of the local plan, and I will leave the chamber. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Rawson. Anybody else? No, I think that's it, isn't it? Okay, next.
Councillor Holmes.
Oh, Councillor Holmes, sorry.
I really don't know whether I need to, Mr. Mayor, but the local plan, I might be involved somehow with that. I don't know whether it's necessary or not. I hadn't thought about it before, but it's because we have land in Melton and it's being developed.
That will be down to your own.
I don't think it's,
Yeah,
but I just thought I better, I don't want anybody to think that I've not, you know.
Yeah, if you've got any problem, if you've got any doubts, it might be as well to leave. It's entirely up to you. Thank you. Okay. Right, moving on then. Mayor's announcements. Oh, that's me. Okay, well, first of all, I'd like to welcome our latest newest councillor, Councillor Atherton, to her first meeting. I'm sure the leader may mention something more at some point on there. The functions that I've been attending recently, I've attended charity events at Leicester, Bowmanor Hall and the Lord Mayor's Spring Ball. I was invited to the Rotary Club Charter Dinner, which was very nice. I've attended civic services at Newark and Stamford. I was invited to start the Melton Lions Swimathon that took place a couple of weeks ago, which went very well. And I reopened the miniature railway on Wilton Park. Also, I attended the Scout St George's Day Parade and presented prizes to the winners of the Cycle Classic. Although I'll not understand why these people are supreme athletes and they were given pork pies, Stilton cheese and beer. Very strange, but there we go. I was also invited to plant a tree outside Parkside here for the Jubilee tree celebrations, along with Melton in Bloom and Reverend Kevin Ashby, who I believe has just had to leave. Oh, you're still here. I knew you weren't there. Yeah, so we all went out and planted trees out the front here at Parkside. There's a couple more things we're supposed to be doing in the next few days and weeks before my time as the mayor ends. The other thing I would like to mention is this Sunday, my son's doing his swim. 22 miles. It's a long way. So if anybody wishes to go down and cheer him on, please do so at Melton Swimming Baths. That's the end of my bit. Okay, so next is the leaders' announcements.
Permission, Mr. Mayor, I would ask if we could just bring forward, please, the motion to proposed by Councillor Posnet on Reverend Kevin Ashby, because he has to go. If we could just bring that forward before the leaders' announcements, that would be gratefully received by all.
That's fine, Leader. So we move to motions on notice, number 9. First motion on notice is for Councillor Posnet to outline the motion. Councillor Posnet.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. It gives me great pleasure to propose this motion to Kevin. Reverend Kevin Ashby has been the rector of St Mary's Church since 2009 and has decided to retire, with his last day being the 1st of May. Kevin has faced a number of challenges during his time in Melton. including the biggest renovation of St Mary's Church in the last 2 centuries. Kevin had to cope with the church being closed for a year in 2017. While heating was installed, lighting was upgraded, flooring was levelled, toilets were put in and other features were added for the project that cost £2 million. Kevin has also faced the challenge of continuing his ministry during the COVID pandemic, delivering services online and maintaining links with the community, including with many elderly people who were confined to their homes. I would like to give my personal thanks to Kevin. Kevin, you've supported me through sad times and happy times. And one of the highlights of my years as county chairman was my civic service at Melton Church, following its renovation and the comments that my guests made. They were overawed with it and wanted to know why it wasn't the cathedral, which we do keep asking. Kevin will be remembered for commitment, leadership and enthusiasm. And I'm sure members will all join me in wishing him and Alison a long and happy retirement. Thank you, Kevin.
Councillor Rawson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and also thank you, Councillor Posnett, for putting that forward. And Kevin, I've got to say, 14 years it's flown by, hasn't it? And you always come along. I bet you've only missed 2 or 3, I suspect, in 14 years. It really shows your dedication to the community just through coming to here. But I know very well how highly you are respected right across the borough, and through the COVID terrible circumstances of 2 years now. You can't believe what we've been through in the last 2 years. BC, before COVID, I was talking about this morning, what used to happen somewhere else. But yeah, you took the church through a very difficult time. Obviously, the floor heating going on in the church as well. It's a shame you couldn't have actually done that at the same time as COVID, really, when you think about it. But hey ho, circumstances don't always work out. And I've got to say, Kevin, I've particularly enjoyed your sense of humour. You always do see a light side, but you know, the commitment you've shown to the community is absolutely fantastic. I wish you and yours everything that you wish for yourselves in the future. And on behalf of the Melton community, thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Rawson. Okay, over to members if they wish to say anything. Got Councillor Graham.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. For many of us involved with the Church of England, there is a feeling that it's lost its way. How refreshing it is to have had Kevin with us for the last 13 years, with such a positive, constructive outlook and an enormous sense of humour and charisma. Many owe him a great debt. I have 2 complaints. The first one is the underfloor heating in the church. If you have a carol service and people very kindly give you a box of Maltesers to give to every little carol singer, and you put them on the floor waiting to give them to the carol singers, there's rather a sad mess when your presentation time comes. And also, I'll never forgive him, because he informed me after I'd seen the Passion Play in Aberamagar and complained that although there were animals all over the stage, but when Peter denied Christ for the 3rd time, no one had pulled the tail feathers out of a cockerel and produced a cock-a-doodle-doo. Kevin informed me in his "I don't suffer fools gladly" sort of voice, but the cockcrow was a Roman form of reveille. Well, no one had ever told me that before, and no one had ever told the weather vane man who keeps on putting the cockerels on top of churches. But I trust him. Kevin, we owe you all a great debt. Keep in touch, and I hope that you and Alison have a very long and well-deserved retirement. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Graham. Councillor Evans. Holmes. Councillor Holmes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, I would like to reiterate everything that everybody has said. The Rev Kev, quite amazing man, gets all the children doing things, gets all the other people doing things. Well, the last time I was mayor, he said, I'm going to make the most difficult reading for you that I've ever done, which he did. Well, seeing that I'm a bit dyslexic, my goodness, it took some, but I did it because he made me do it and he thought it was really funny. And then I think there was another time when there were a lot of children around and he said, now then, you will know what this is, won't you? And I'm thinking, no, I don't really. But he has actually been fantastic for Melton in all sorts of different ways. I wish him and his wife a very, very happy retirement. You are going to be a very hard act to follow. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Holmes. Does anybody else wish to speak? No. Okay, right, so we'll go to the vote then. That the council recognise and thanks Reverend Kevin Ashby for his service to Melton Mowbray and the prayers he has provided to this council. All those in favour, please raise. Yeah, thank you very much, members. That was unanimous. Thank you very much. Thank you, Kevin.
Could I just make one comment before I go? First of all, I've never been motioned before, so thank you for that. And could I also give you a very big thank you for your support during my time here. A lot of what we've done, we couldn't possibly have done without the support of the council, not only the use of this room when the church was closed, but also many other ways as well. So thank you very much to you too. I'd like that recording as well. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Reverend. Okay, we'll go back to item 6, the leaders' announcements.
Well, first of all, thanks to our monitoring officer who's introduced me to a new switch on here tonight. I can now hear everything that's being said. So it's a shame I didn't have it on earlier, but hey ho, I didn't realise what these things can do, but it really is excellent actually. I've got to copy you, Mr. Mayor, a little bit, because I want to also start by welcoming Councillor Ziggy Atherton to her first meeting this evening, following her election at the end of March. Ziggy has already made a huge contribution to the people of Melton through her work at the storehouse, and I genuinely look forward to her contributing now to the work of this council, particularly as we continue to develop support for people struggling through the cost of living crisis. As we all know, the price cap for energy costs rose by 54% in April. And with inflation at levels not seen for years, we know people will be struggling. Our teams have worked extremely hard to pull together a package of support to help people in need. And I am delighted that we were one of the first councils in Leicestershire to make the £150 energy rebate payments, with thousands of households already having received their funds and many more to follow. As well as welcoming new colleagues, we must also say farewell to old ones. Following our motion of gratitude to former Chief Constable Simon Cole at our last meeting, we were all devastated by the tragic news of his untimely passing so soon after his retirement. Simon was a long-standing colleague and I have to say a friend. We often exchange texts, particularly about Leicester Tigers, Norwich City and Nottingham Forest, of course. He was passionate by Leicester Tigers and he taught youth rugby all over the county. And for some reason, he was passionate about Norwich, and yet he was Leicestershire born and bred. I never quite got that one, but hey ho, that's where we are. And we did enjoy a Norwich Nottingham Forest match together at one point in time. Yeah, someone I did work closely with for a number of years. He was, no one can say different, but he was an outstanding public servant and leader and understood the vital partnership that needs to exist between the police and local councils. As a council, we continue to honour his memory and offer our sincere condolences to his family and loved ones. An untimely death is always a reminder of what really matters, as are the world events where ordinary people suffer unspeakable horror in the face of war. Sadly, this is all too common, and again, our thoughts turn to those in the Ukraine who are facing appalling suffering right now. As a council, we are working with our county and district council colleagues to support the Homes for Ukraine scheme, undertaking property inspections for sponsor households and supporting Ukrainian guests and sponsor households as they adapt to the changing situation. We will continue to do all we can to help those who are suffering in this terrible situation. And I genuinely want to pay tribute to those members who helped raise over £4,000 now, I'm told, through the charity race night the other evening. 4,158.45 is the latest amount. That is a staggering amount. Congratulations to those who organised the event. Congratulations to those who enjoyed the event, and congratulations to those who couldn't make it, but even though found ways of giving. In other news, the County Council has now submitted their proposal for a level 2 county deal. As district leaders across Leicestershire, we have made it clear, we've made it clear now for over 2 years as well, that our preference would be for a superior level 3 deal across the East Midlands. We await the outcome of further discussions with government, and I look forward to meeting with our county colleagues and other district leaders on this issue in May. Earlier this month, Mr. Mayor, we received the excellent news that Melton will benefit from nearly 1.2 million of UK shared prosperity funding. This is money we can use to help increase life chances and pride in our communities. And I look forward to exploring funding options with members and our partners as we build our 3-year investment plan over the coming months. We will also consider opportunities to fund joint initiatives with neighbouring councils, and particularly those who share our rural market town heritage, like Harborough and Rutland. Working closely with our rural neighbours is crucial to ensuring the East Leicestershire voice is heard, and that we are in the best possible position to submit a strong joint levelling up fund bid when the round 2 deadline closes in July. This month also heralded another significant milestone in the delivery of the Relief Road, with demolition work beginning at Sisonby Farm on Nottingham Road, Mr. Mayor. The road has been talked about for generations, and it was a delight to see the first tangible steps to make it a reality. The MMDR represents a huge investment for the County Council, and I remain proud of the role MBC has played in supporting them and ensuring it can be delivered. We will continue to support the County Council over the coming months, and I look forward to the construction work starting in early 2023. As we know, the MMDR will stimulate thousands of new homes and jobs. I understand it is thought it will create 6,000 new jobs in this locality, which is just massive post-COVID recovery, no doubt about that. And it demonstrates the increased confidence in Melton. And because of that, it's great to see the launch of the stockyard at the cattle market recently, last Thursday afternoon. Working with our partners, Gilstream, it's fantastic to see the new businesses relocate into the site and establishing a new hub and brand for high quality food and drink producers to become part of the rural capital of food. I look forward to many more joining them over the months and years. And just as a footnote, Mr. Mayor, for those who follow the internet on a regular basis, if you went on to the Melton Times website this afternoon, and Councillor Posnett was at the cabinet meeting as well this afternoon at County Hall, the County Council have agreed to serve the compulsory purchase orders in the north and east. And this will allow the archaeological digging to start and check-in, because it should be over by the end of June, as I understand it. So that means we can get a head start. So early in the new year, that means we will see the construction gangs on the land. Gilstream have got the contractors, we all know, and it's going to be a very exciting time for Melton Mowbray. And say 6,000 jobs, 3 new schools, 4,500 new homes. It's going to be a buzzing place, there's no doubt about that. Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Lawson. We now come on to item 7, public question time. I can confirm that we have a question. I therefore invite Mr. Glyn Cartwright to ask his question.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, thank you. I feel a bit of a fraud asking this question, but I think this is the only place where I'm going to get it answered. And that is, please, would you let me know the balance of the funds granted to Melton Matters? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cartwright. I would like now invite Councillor Freer, portfolio holder for climate access and engagement, to provide a response.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Glyn, for your question. And thank you for meeting me and having an open discussion. I think you will be happy with the response, but as I spoke to you during our discussion, that my door's always open. So if there's anything further that you want to discuss about this, then more than happy to do that. Without further ado, I'll give you the formal response. I've checked the position on the question you've raised and can confirm that the funding allocated by the Town Area Committee in 2017 was allowed, but it was not considered to be a grant. It was not formally allocated also to Melton Matters itself. Rather, the council's records reflect that this was a one-off budget to address environmental issues, for example, dog fouling. I recognise that through discussions with elected members at the time, the council wanted to enable Melton Matters to influence how this funding was spent. Though sometimes this informal arrangement has led to ambiguity and confusion, which we absolutely need to address. Over the last 5 years, we have spent vastly more than the original funding allocated on environmental matters. This includes providing Melton Matters with equipment and supporting cleanups, as well as installing bins, etc. We have also installed a significant amount of signage to support the new Public Spaces Protection Order and have also invested in dedicated environmental enforcement officer resources. On this basis, I can confirm that the funding allocated in 2017 has been fully spent and there is no budget remaining. Having said that, I want to reassure you that we remain committed to supporting community groups in Melton, as discussed, recognise the valuable contribution volunteers and community groups make in addressing community issues. We discussed litter picking specifically when we met, and I'm able to confirm that the council would be happy to purchase a one-off supply of litter picking equipment, which can be made available to support groups carrying out litter picking activities. This would be on the basis that the council purchasing and holding a stock of litter picking equipment, which could be requested as needed by groups including Melton Matters and Melton Wombles. Thank you.
I was just going to come to that. Yes, Mr. Cartwright, if you wish, you may also put one supplementary question. The supplementary question must arise directly out of the original question or the reply. Floor is yours.
It's not a question, it's a statement. And the statement is very simple.
Actually, you're not allowed to make statements. You're only allowed to ask a question.
Right, so, okay. In 2017, we were awarded a sum of £7,000. I believe that there is still £1,500 left of that money. Could somebody tell me what's happened to the £1,500 or thereabouts that I believe is still available?
All right, thank you very much, Ms. Carr. I think Councillor Freer did mention that the money has all been spent, and she outlined where it had gone.
Money has not all been spent, Mr. Mayor.
Well,
I should know some of the money that I've spent.
Okay, right. Thank you very much. I'll invite Councillor Freer to come back on that one, please. Could you just turn that microphone off for a moment? Oh, sorry, it's been done. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. I think I addressed that in the original statement, that the money allocated, well, I did say that there was some ambiguity and confusion over the money, that the money wasn't awarded directly to Melton Matters. There were conversations and discussions that we had where it was alluded to you that that money was awarded specifically for that group. But when reflection on the meeting minutes, this was a sum of money that was for the environmental aspects of Melton. Specifically, I think originally dog fouling was the main issue at the time, and the money was not ever meant to carry forward. It was supposed to have been spent. It was therefore carried forward for a number of years, and once the amount of money added up for the specific equipment plus collecting of the waste and other aspects, the amount of money that was spent on environmental activities vastly outweighed the original £7,000 that was awarded, that was spoke about in that meeting. I think it's valid that the council have made a commitment to provide more equipment over and above that was requested for the community groups to use on an ongoing basis until, and it's important that we draw a line under this at some point, but that equipment will be purchased by the council and will be made available to those community groups. And I think that would be far in excess of the money that was originally allocated back in 2017. Thank you.
Thank you. No, there's no debate on this. So yeah, well, well, thank you very much, but there is no debate, so we can't carry on. Thank you. Right, moving on to item 8, questions from members. I can confirm that we have a question. I therefore invite Councillor Lumley to ask his question.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd just like to actually join the other members for their comments on Honorary Alderman Gerald Botterill. Oh, sorry. Is that better? Sorry, Steve, Mr. Cont. Reverend Kevin Ashby and Simon Cole. Right, members, question I had. Oh, may I also add a supplementary question after this one, please? Fly tipping across the borough has increased significantly over the past few years. As an example, in my ward, Newport ward, there's a continuous fly tipping on the Algernon Road car park and on Scorford Brook. Recently announced CCTV projects would have been obviously great on the Algernon Road car park, as lobbied on for quite some years. For Scorford Brook, I've been in touch with the Environment Agency about this on a regular basis, to the point where I'm on speed dial asking them to clear fly tips, which is affecting the actual watercourse. Therefore, can the Cabinet strongly consider significantly reducing or make complementary the bulk waste collection charge on items for a trial period to see if this significantly reduces rates across the borough? This has been trialled at other councils across the UK, and there have been significant success outcomes to this. This could also successfully reduce our overall high fly tipping collection costs. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Lumley. Councillor Freer, please to respond.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Lumley, for that question. I see from the spoken version of the question, it adds slightly more information than the written version of the question, but I'll do my utmost to answer what you've asked. As a portfolio holder, I've always said that if anyone's got anything that they have, any suggestions or anything under my portfolio that they'd like to come to me and speak about, then as I've said to Mr. Cartwright, my door's always open. So, you know, direct representation would be welcome at any time, but I'm happy to answer this question as it's been put formally in a formal response. Our records show that whilst there has been an increase in fly tipping, it has not been a steep increase, and fly tipping cases have remained at between 30 to 40 cases per month. However, we have seen a slight change in the type of material that is fly tipped, with a slight increase in builders' rubble and DIY materials. It is believed that this may be due to household waste sites introducing charges for DIY materials per kilogram for disposal. Government are currently consulting with disposal authorities on the possibility of removing those charges in the future, with the aim to reduce fly tipping. We are aware of fly tipping hotspots in the borough, including the Algernon Road car park, Bentley Street garages and Betmill Court garages, where fly tipping occurs. We work closely with Biffa to ensure it is removed as quickly as possible. When fly tipping takes place, the council does try to identify the source and will take enforcement action where possible. In terms of bulky waste collections, the council provides a collection service to domestic properties for bulky household items that are too big to put in a domestic bin. This can be arranged via the customer service team or via the council's website. The fee for collection and disposal for up to 5 items is £34.28. There is a separate fee for white goods. The council already offers discounted rates to people in receipt of pension credit, housing benefits, or council tax support, and can advise customers on eligibility for discounted fees on a case-by-case basis. Data since January 2021 recorded on the council's customer services platform shows that on average, we receive 112 bulky waste collection requests per month. The council's website also includes advice on other ways to dispose of appropriately of bulky items. As portfolio holder, I'm not supportive of reducing or cancelling bulky waste collection fee, as this is an important way to offset the costs for collection and disposal. However, the council has already committed resource and focused this important area of work. Over the past 12 months, NBC have issued 5 fixed penalty notices for fly tipping related offences. 3 of the fixed penalty fees were paid. Where fixed penalty notices remain unpaid, the council is taking action through the courts. Additionally, over the last 12 months, the council has successfully prosecuted 3 fly tipping offences. The council also has an ongoing court case. And the council has recently purchased 5 CCTV units, which we will deploy in hotspot areas in the near future. Fly tipping is a serious criminal offence. It is unacceptable, and the council will continue to seek prosecutions. I will ensure that we continue to raise awareness of the services available to the public, such as the bulky waste collection services, and also to remind people of their responsibilities in relation to this. I'm confident that officers will continue to communicate proactively with residents in relation to responsible and appropriate disposal of waste, and also where we take enforcement action to address fly tipping and other antisocial behaviour. That's my formal response. Like I've said before, if there's something that the council would like to discuss with me in different proposals and how we can address the matter, then I'm more than happy for him to come and email me or sort a meeting out and we can discuss it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Freer. Councillor Lumley, supplementary question.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, Councillor Freer-Jones, you made a very good point. I apologise that I changed my question slightly. When I actually submitted the question, I actually lost the question. Can you believe it? It's a long story. So I had to rewrite it again. I thought, oh, I think this was a question. So clearly it wasn't. I've edited quite a bit of it. So I apologise. Thank you for doing a very good job answering that. You're actually part of my supplementary question was that you've actually already answered, and part of the problem is other products such as tubs and bathtubs and other sort of like masonry products are being dumped, etc., which is an issue both Leicestershire County Council and with us and the government. What my supplementary question is, if you can answer this, by the way, because I know I know it's not hasn't long been announced, but the Department for Food and Rural Affairs, on behalf of the government, have just very recently announced that they are actively going to look into a scheme to allow waste sites across the country to accept masonry-based products such as bathtubs and plasterboard. Can the cabinet member give an update to this as part of their response to my initial question? Just to add as well, Mr. Mayor, it's a very good point, Councillor Freer-Jones, to let me come to you about issues. You're absolutely right. I just thought because this actual platform of actually councillors asking questions at full council is hardly ever used. It's just there. I think it's very good for the audience, the wider audience online and here, and the councillors to ask these sort of questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Lumley. Councillor Freer.
Thank you. Thank you for your supplementary question. I would be happy to provide an answer on that, but I'd be happy to provide that answer to all councillors because I think it's a very important issue. I can't specifically give you accurate detail information at this point, so I'd rather not answer and do that as an email supported by technical information after this meeting, if that's appropriate. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Freer. That's the end of the questions. Going back to motions on notice. Could I please ask Mr. John Skerritt to come and take a seat at the front of the council?
I've got a question from Councillor Higgins. Councillor Higgins indicating he wishes to speak.
Sorry, Councillor Higgins.
Sorry, just a point of clarification, because I heard the answer on the portfolio holder, and the Somerby ward also had issues which they have raised with the county councillor as well, who's also the leader of the council. Fly tipping has gone up from 2019 to 2022 by 17%. So that's quite a significant amount. It's gone up. But if the household recycling centres were open in Botsford and Somerby, that might also give people an option. And I know Councillor Freer-Jones was saying ideas. So could we lobby our county council to open those sites, please? Thank you.
Your comments are noted, Councillor Higgins. Thank you. So again, can John Skerritt please come and join us at the front here, please? Thank you very much. Right, the motion is that the council gives thanks to John Skerritt for the dedication and services given to the community for almost 50 years. Councillor Brown to move.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, John, for coming this evening. I think we've probably started out our careers both on tenant engagement here at Melton, and we finish it. Certainly, it's good to be here whenever you've retired from your role in the community of supporting tenants. But John Skerritt, former Mayor of Melton, has served as chairman of the Tenants Forum Executive Committee for over 20 years, which is very commendable, and has made a huge contribution to improving the council's landlord services, and has been a driving force for giving tenants and leaseholders of Melton Borough a voice. Before his involvement with TFEC, John was a district councillor between 1973 and 1999, representing the Edgeworth ward, and he also was a county councillor representing then, I believe, the Melton North ward, and also portfolio holder of the Cabinet for Education. John joined TFEC in 1999, and I first came across John on the 2nd of September 2002 at the TFEC AGM at Age UK, just up the road here. And I have to say it was one of the most memorable events I ever attended, or AGMs. We ended up out in the car park with tenants threatening tenants, and officers threatening tenants, and officers threatening officers. And that was my first insight to Melton Mowbray. And I thought, Jesus, this is just like home, isn't it? We're all getting on great together, and that's how it went. But lucky enough, it went from strength to strength. And at that time, Councillor Holmes was the chair of CNSA, and Councillor Cumbers was the vice chair of Community and Social Affairs. And John highlighted in those days the shortcomings of the council housing service, like he has done recently. So it just shows you how things go around in circles. But John, through his tenacity, lobbied and lobbied and lobbied at the then chief executive, Delwyn Burbage. And we eventually had the Audit Commission come into us. And the Audit Commission basically recognised what John had seen and give us a very poor rating. And that gave John the appetite to actually work with the officers and work with the members. And we quickly turned that around and got it up to a fair service with good prospect of improvement. And that was John's tenacity of bringing people together. John at that time was vice chair, and he served under Bob Scarborough, if you remember that, John, Bob. And we had some really, really good times of doing things. John's whole life has been around helping people and helping tenants. And John does that today. As of I was speaking to the director earlier in the week, and I said, John is still fighting for tenants, even though he has stepped down from his role. He introduced tours of the borough, making officers go around and see what was wrong, what was right, and how we can improve things. And that stays with us today. John was also a founding member of the East Midlands Tenant Participation Forum, and was a few years ago recognised for his contribution to that role. Then we had some good times, bit of networking up at Harrogate at the Institute of Housing. And I remember the nights that we had out with Councillor Rhodes and Councillor Wright, and how we were meeting other authorities and picking up ideas. And John would come back to the council and say, look, this council's doing it, why can't we do it? And that's where the ideas and the improvements started. As well as fighting for tenants' rights, we went through a number of reviews within the council housing stock. And what John always fought for was to keep the council housing stock within the borough of Melton, to improve it and have it an asset for the local area. And here at the end of his tenure, he's actually seen out 5 politicians and 4 chief executives, and John's still here. And that was Councillor Holmes, Councillor Rhodes, Councillor Posnick, Councillor Wright, and Councillor Pearson. Yeah, and he's done that, so a credit to you, John. And it's been an absolute pleasure and honour to be your friend and to work with you. And also to say a thank you to Sheila, your wife, who's been really the stone behind you, that's worked with you and helped drive things forward over the last number of years. Now, saying that, John stepped down as TFEC chair in February, and whilst TFEC is no longer in place, I will ensure that as we move forward into a new era of engagement and accountability to the introduction of the Charter of Social Housing Residents, this council continues to commit wholeheartedly to tenant and leaseholder engagement and to ensuring our tenants and leaseholders can hold us to account as their landlord, something that John, as I've said before, has been instrumental in leading and development. John, it's been a pleasure to work with you, and you will forever stand out as a hugely committed and effective councillor and tenant leader. His public service contribution to the borough has been immense, and he has impacted positively on so many lives. John, thank you. And I request that members join me in supporting the following motion, that the council gives thanks to John Scarrett for the dedication and service he's given to the community for almost 50 years. Thank you, John.
Councillor Rawson.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I've just got to reminisce a bit because I've possibly known John here longer than anyone in this chamber, I think. I first picked up on John in 1972, actually, so 50 years ago now. And he was in the Melton Times. And I have to say, John, you were seen as a bit of a rebel and to the perceived establishment in Melton Mowbray at that time. And as we all know, you did first stand for election in the Edgerton ward with a guy called Mick Jones, who you told me tonight lives in Oby and Wigston, you think now. And you both took it for the Labour Party. Now, of course, this was in the days of Ted Heath's 3-day week and energy rationing and all sorts of rationing. I think we even had rationing tickets handed out for petrol in '73. So dark, dark days there were. But you got elected by quite a landslide, I remember. And so I picked up on you even more at that point in time, and I used to follow you in the Melton Times. And so I'm telling you my little secrets now. Your first meeting was in the Melton Borough Council Edgerton Lodge, which is quite some claim, isn't it, when you think about it? And only yesterday, actually, I drove past it and I thought to myself, you know, for a council headquarters, doesn't that look so small nowadays? And it does. But of course, that was the Urban District Council building, and it had a council chamber, and that's where you had your first meeting. You did go on to complete 26 years of Melton Borough Council, which is a long line of service, no doubt about it. One of the highlights, John, is you married an old Dolby girl. So that has to be good, doesn't it? So you married Sheila in '81, and it's a shame Sheila can't be with us tonight, but obviously pass on our best wishes. One of the things you did teach me, John, when we first started talking together was the economics of leafleting at election times. Let's see if you remember this. I was complaining about having to go from door to door and how long it used to take, and you said, you don't want to do that. You said, all you do is do 3 or 4 per street. That's all you have to do. Then you all talk to each other. And, whether you're right or wrong, but that's what you said. And it worked for you because you always got elected. There's no doubt about that. So you did teach me a little bit about the economics of how to distribute leaflets. But what more importantly, you told me how people talk to each other. And that is massively important. Now, John, you stood for the county council in 1977, and you really did take on the establishment then, because the Conservative candidate was a strong personality in the rural area, and also the town, and also the meat abattoir business, as we remember. And it was a narrow win, but you did beat him, and you went off to what you always told me was the Castle on the Hill, County Hall, of course. You always called it the Castle on the Hill. And if I remember right, in the 1977 election, the Lib Labs formed a coalition to run County Hall. And you went along and you just walked through the doors and you suddenly found yourself the spokesman for the ruling party on education. Am I right on that? I think I am, aren't I? Yeah. So all of a sudden you became an education expert and you held that position for a long while. And that goes to show the credibility you had at County Hall. Now, the interesting thing is, John, to this day, the present chief executive of Leicestershire County Council, who's been there probably longer than 50 years, I don't know, but a long, long time anyway. Every time I see him, we start reminiscing about Melton Mowbray, he will always say, do you ever see that John chap, the Liberal? And I said, John Scott. He said, that's him. He said, how is he nowadays? So he always asks after you. And that's quite something when you think of someone who has the workload that a chief executive of a top level authority has. You have moved on, John. Obviously, I'm not going to mention TFEC. That goes without saying. But what I will mention is your skills at playing trumpet. I can remember you were quite good at that as well. I haven't heard of you playing it lately, but you used to play it. I do know that. And it was always looked forward to. I also remember, John, I don't know whether you'll remember this one. You were part of the social scene in Melton in the 70s and 80s. On Saturdays in those days, it was the done thing. It's a bit like kids do in Nottingham, even to this day. And you have to, on a Saturday afternoon, they go and walk around and see who they can bump into. And that used to happen in Melton all those years ago. People used to go out and walk out, and John and Sheila would always be walking around the Melton streets on a Saturday afternoon, around the market stores, and the place in those days would be heaving. Now, unfortunately, as we all know, Saturday afternoons just aren't like that in Melton anymore. But you became part of Melton folklore, John, and all I've got to say is thank you. You've done a great job for Melton. Thank you to Sheila for supporting you over all those years. And enjoy tonight, John. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Orson. Now open it up to members. Councillor Graham.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As I was driving here this evening, the ground started to move and I thought that we were having an earthquake. And I suddenly realized there's a lot of old councillors spinning in their graves tonight. Why? Because quite rightly, John has always been fun and unspoken. It was not always appreciated by those old councillors, which he used to have such fun baiting. I've known John since 1987, and he was always the epitome of what a good councillor should be, and was greatly admired by those in his ward. I remember when I was first mayor, I had a dinner to go to, and I asked my deputy mayor, Colin Chapman, to chair the council meeting. I only gave him one instruction: get the council house rent rise through. John took full advantage of the fact that it was snowing hard and several rural councillors could not get in. Sure enough, he managed to freeze those rents for another year. In 1991-92, when John was mayor, my wife Pam could not come to an event. So I took our eldest daughter, Bella, who was a very young, impressionable teenager at the time, to an event John was organizing. He had a Chipmunks tribute band. They were male strippers hiding their modesty with balloons until Sheila got the pin out. It's a sight I've tried and failed to erase from my mind for the last 30 years, and I don't think my daughter has ever recovered. There have been so many times we've been on the same side, and I cannot thank you enough for all you've done over the last 50 years for Melton Borough Council and Melton. And I'm sure that when those old councillors stop spinning in their graves, they'll realise the great debt that we all owe you. Thank you, John.
Thank you, Councillor Graham. Councillor Child.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would like to reiterate the earlier comments made about John. John didn't suffer fools gladly. When he became mayor in 91, 92, he asked, a message came for me to go up and see him in the members' room. On the basis that his bark is worse than his bite, I went up, and I have a document here. See what that is, John? That's the cricket scoreboard. And you said to me, I want you, pointing at me, I want you to arrange a cricket match between the staff and the members. Well, the staff played regularly at Nipton, and he said, I want a social evening to follow. I need to get the staff and the officers as one. So the general feeling was, well, we'll bat first. They won't have much of a side, because I looked at the scorebook and I saw Aubrey, Graham, Skerritt, Dean Ramsdale, John Rudman and Ron Scanlon. So we batted first and we got 128. So I said, right, no problem here, but there was a problem. He brought Ed Hutchinson along and he pummeled the ball all over the outfield. And members actually won handsomely. But not content on that, we said we'll challenge you the following year and we'll make sure that we evened it up. Anyway, John, it's been a pleasure working with you and I hope you'll have a long and happy retirement. All the best. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Councillor Child. Councillor Holmes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just finally, yes, when TFEC started, and I knew John from being a councillor, and also how hard he was going to work for the people that really mattered in this town and in this borough. He's a Meltonian born and bred. Are you not, John? I think you are. Yeah, I thought you were. And you know, I've known Skerritt's always, but his determination and for the people of Melton will always be remembered. And I'm just delighted that you are getting this honour tonight. So sorry that your wife can't come tonight. Lovely lady as well, who I know has always been supportive to you. And I would just like to give my best wishes to you as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Holmes. Anybody else wish to make contributions? John, would you like to say anything before we proceed?
Sorry. Well, I'd just like to say, you know, that I'm quite surprised actually, you know, that you've asked me along tonight to do this presentation. And I've got to say also that, you know, I've enjoyed every minute of my time as a councillor, as a county councillor and as a tenant representative. I've enjoyed every minute of it 100%. And the best thing I think I've got from it is the fact that over them years, I think I've helped, you know, probably 200-300 people. And I really enjoyed helping those people. And if I had the chance to do it again, I would do it again. As regards TFEC, then it's not only myself, you know, I was only one person in the TFEC movement. I've got to think about all the people past and present for the past 22 years, you know, who worked long and hard. And indeed, it was TFEC and only TFEC who in actual fact carried out the stock option appraisal on behalf of Melton Borough Council. When we actually went out, we shot ourselves in our own feet by going out and saying what a good organisation Melton Borough Council was. And, you know, then, and I'll finish at that. I've enjoyed every minute of it. Thank you very much. And I'd like to thank all the people.
Okay, moving on to the vote. All those in favour of the motion, please shout. Yeah, that's unanimous. So I'd now and John with his certificate. It's a great pleasure, John, to present you with this
Thank you very
certificate for
much.
your special recognition.
Thank you.
Thank you for your
Thank you
service.
very much. Thank you all. Thank you.
Some whiskey, the parlour, John.
Okay, moving on to the next motion. Safer Communities, Councillor Fisher to outline the motion.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Members, if you haven't had the chance to read my motion yet, I hope that after hearing it, you will agree with me that the points I've raised are valid ones, and I hope to look forward to receiving your support. The safety and well-being of our communities should be at the forefront of our minds at all times. Melton is generally a safe place where people can go about their lives without the fear of crime, and we should not tolerate behaviour or incidents that jeopardise this in any way. For some time now, our borough has been subjected to an unacceptable antisocial behaviour, often involving groups of teenagers and attributed to a small minority of our community. This type of behaviour is not unique to Melton, but needs to be addressed before it spirals out of control. Members, I'm certain that many of you will have witnessed groups of young people congregating outside McDonald's in the town, in parks and supermarket car parks, which can be quite intimidating for passers-by. And whilst this is nothing new, there certainly seems to be less available for the younger generations to do nowadays. Local police and council officers are working extremely hard to identify and take action against those that are responsible for this unacceptable behaviour. However, we need to understand the root cause of this behaviour. We need to create more opportunities to engage with young people in ways that give them a voice, and something as simple as a safe place to meet with their peers. The recent pandemic has hit our communities hard. It is likely to have impacted on our young people in ways that we can only understand by reaching out and giving them a voice. Additionally, over the last 18 months in Melton alone, we have lost 2 well-used facilities, Terminal 1, an indoor skate park, and Youth, which provided an indoor area to meet up and carry out gaming and sports activities. Local scouting groups and sports activity providers do a fantastic job of engaging with young people of all ages, introducing them to new skills and friends, but these don't always run full time and don't always appeal to everyone for various reasons. Whilst commissioning of youth service may not be within the council's remit, our young people are our future generation. We need to play our important part in empowering them to give them a voice. We need to better understand what they need to grow and prosper and to become responsible adults. We need to work out with our partners to create opportunities for young people and to ensure they can access them. We need to understand the root causes for antisocial behaviour and to work with our young people to address them. I request that members join me in supporting the following motion. That as a community leader, Melton Borough Council is a driving force in making positive changes for our younger generation, working closely with other partners and the young people across Melton to understand what Melton has to offer young people, what is needed, and develop a clear plan for empowering and supporting young people. To commit to giving young people a voice across Melton, to learn from our young people and to work with them to understand what is needed to improve services and facilities across Melton and to reduce antisocial behaviour. And finally, to support the emerging Action for Melton Youth AMY project as a key opportunity to engage, support and empower young people through collaboration with other key partners who collectively make a difference. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Councillor Bindloss. Councillor Smith, sorry, Fisher.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good evening, members. We are all aware of the recent spate of antisocial behaviour committed by a small group of young people in the borough, and we know that most of the time this kind of antisocial behaviour and crime can be as a result of boredom and apathy. It is important that we tackle the causes of the problem with well thought out long-term solutions, which this motion sets out to support. Giving our young people a voice and some responsibility with regards to the provision of services and activities will go a long way with encouraging this small group of young people to take pride in their town. I would encourage all members to support this motion and demonstrate our council's dedication to supporting and including the young people of Melton in the decisions made that affect their lives. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Smith. Any members wish to make comments? Well, we'll start with I forget names. Councillor Chandler.
I fully support what both the two councillors have said. Antisocial behaviour isn't just in the town. We're riddled with it in the villages. We've got immense problems at Bottisford, and Councillor Pritchett and I, together with some councillors from the Vale, we've been having a series of meetings with Councillor Graham right from the autumn. We've met with the police. We don't get much response from them because I think they're overworked. But young people have changed over the years. They don't want to go to a youth club now till they're 15 or 16. They'll go till they're 13, but they've exhausted it by then. They want to do more practical things. And there are no practical activities, as I can see, put on for youngsters today. And this is one of the problems we've got. It's also a problem getting people to volunteer to come forward to run youth clubs and youth activities. You have to jump through so many hoops today that it's becoming an impossibility to get people to take that responsibility on. But I know I fully support the motion, but it isn't just in Melton Mowbray, if that's what you were implementing, it's throughout the borough. Thank you. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Chandler. I think Councillor Smith just wanted to come back on that one.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I fully agree with you, Councillor Chandler. I do recognise that it is a borough-wide problem and is possibly even more prevalent in the rural areas than the town, although it may be less spoken about on social media, for example. I'm going to take full advantage of the fact that for the next 2 weeks I am actually a young person, and just make you aware of the fact that there are so many young people out there that are willing to come forward. I've worked with several hundred young people over the past few years, and I'm aware of a group of students from Longfield that actually did run the venue youth club on a Tuesday and Thursday evening, and they were in bits when that closed. So we do have those young people out there that are willing to come forward and support us. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Smith. Councillor Rawson.
Yeah, I haven't got a lot to say really, Mr. Mayor, but number one, I really congratulate Councillor Fisher and Smith for bringing this motion forward. It is about youth. As Councillor Chandler said, youth have changed actually. I was talking earlier about what we did in the 80s on a Saturday afternoon, walking around Melton. It simply doesn't happen anymore. It goes to show how the whole environment has changed. Youths have different desires. It's been brought on obviously a lot by the internet and what people perceive that they want. But the important thing is here is in a paragraph, working closely with other partners. The County Council are predominantly responsible for youth services, and we have to recognise that. So it's important we do work with them, but to bring everything that Councillor Fisher and Smith wish to this motion, we work hard to achieve. So congratulations, Councillor Fisher and Smith. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Rawson. Councillor Graham.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As portfolio I've held up, I fully support this motion and agree that this council has a key community leadership role in supporting and empowering young people across Melton, something I'm committed to doing as a portfolio holder for people and the communities. It is important, as I think has been stressed by the people up to now, to note that antisocial behaviour is perpetrated by a very small number of youths, and the police are aware of many of them and have increased their presence to deal with it. Some seem to be aware of antisocial happenings but have not reported them to the police. And I do urge you, when any form of antisocial behaviour is seen, it is reported so a full picture of the scale can be understood and we can address it. Please again remember that the overwhelming vast majority of young people in our borough are fantastic, and we will continue to do what we can to help and inspire them. Members will be aware that within the recent State of Melton report, developing a strategy for young people emerged as a key priority. This is something that needs to be done in partnership and needs to be informed by the voices of young people. The emerging AMY project, Action for Melton Youth, provides a positive way in which to progress this work, and I'm happy to confirm that myself and officers will be supporting the development of the AMI programme. The initial meeting is to take place next week, and I look forward to sharing further information with members in the future and as part of my portfolio holder update to the Scrutiny Committee on the 25th of May. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Graham. Any other members wish to speak? Yes, we'll have Councillor Holmes first.
Now, thank you, Mr. Mayor. As somebody who is president of a youth group in Melton Borough, I know things aren't always easy. It's not easy for parents who can't smack them and things like that. But we have to work in a different way to young people. One of the things I like, quite a few of us have been on the planning committee for a long time. And then we get social housing. Social housing often isn't put in the right place. And we ought to really think about this. Sometimes people are living in houses where they really, in villages, where they haven't the facilities, where they've got the facilities in the towns. And so some young people don't have the ability to enjoy themselves and how very difficult it is. And so I think we have got to think hard and long about our social housing that we have got. And we have got to look at the young people in this borough for them, because we are not doing very often a very good job. I think we really have got to look at it seriously. But I do think that no child is born bad. And quite frankly, we older people should embrace young people. I embrace the young people that I have a lot to do with. Don't always agree with them, but my goodness, I have so many more compliments from them and to them than anything else. So I really think the young people in this borough, I know there's one or two that probably perhaps do a few bad things or difficult things, but on the whole, most of our youth are actually very, very good young people who will become good citizens as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Holmes. Did I see Councillor Higgins with his, or Councillor Lumley? Sorry, closed.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to add that just want to thank the likes of Sharon Brown, Lee Freer, and Glyn Cartwright that organised a police meeting in the town centre about 3 or 4 weeks ago now, roughly. That was very well attended, and the police did actually the whole group, Glyn, Lee and Sharon, actually gave an invite to all councillors to attend. It was a very good meeting. The police gave a really big update of the issues around the town and the borough. In the town, it seemed that there was actually about 12 different children that were the main cause of the trouble, and they have now all been, seen to, which is really, really good. I don't actually agree with the points of Councillor Holmes actually on some of them, because the council have been working hard to try and help these areas which are that have got antisocial behaviour problems. For example, just this week or during the Easter week, the council, the health and sports team actually put on a I think sort of like quite a big football tournament, and that's a really big thing. And I think it happened last year as well during the summer holidays, and that was a really big thing. That was a really good thing to actually interact lots of people together, and quite to that age, very young age, that age group in question, they are actually very into sports at that age. And I think that's a really big thing to try and engage the community. And I believe from what I've actually seen on social media from our council is that is going to be increased and expanded, which is really, really good. Just another point as well, Councillor Carter and I actually met with Inspector Lindsay Booth just a couple of weeks ago about issues both in Asserby and in the town area as a whole. That was a very good meeting, and she's very, very open to having these sorts of catch-ups with councillors. And it was a very productive meeting, and she actually gave a very big update on the things that, you know, that really are quite important to the whole borough. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Lumley. We've got Councillor Pritchett first. Thank you.
Can you hear me okay? Are you okay, leader, coming over? Thank you very much. Yeah, thank you. I think the motion is more than dealing with antisocial behaviour. It's dealing with opportunities for young people and developing them. And I don't want to dilute our own rural case, of which there are issues, but it does seem to me, from looking from the outside, that there are potentially some significant issues in Melton right the way through to young adulthood. The opportunities, jobs, education. We've also got the problem of this bus now, problem to Nottingham, and it's rural isolation. And I'd like to see this motion as more than dealing with a bit of antisocial behaviour. It's more positive than that. Well, that's how I've read it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Pritchett.
To be fair, Mr. Mayor, I was just going to say what Councillor Pritchett said, because I thought, as Councillor Fisher had put it, was a very positive motion. So I'm just going to echo what Councillor Pritchett said. So,
thank you, Councillor Higgins. Councillor Webster.
Mr. Mayor, councillors, I was also at the meeting down the British Legion, the first crime sort of meeting we had with Lee Free as chair. Glyn Cartwright here was also there with Sharon Brown. I think it was a very positive meeting, met with the police. We know all the offenders in the town. I think they are working with it. But I think the council need to give more support to other parties to solve this problem in the town, work together to try and resolve this problem. That's what I'm saying.
Thank you very much, Councillor Webster. Anybody else? No? Okay, then we'll move on to the vote on motions 1, 2 and 3. All those in favour, please show. Looks fairly unanimous with what we've got left, isn't it?
Yes, 23, yeah.
Yeah, 20, that's 20. Okay, thank you very much. Right, okay. Sorry? I should imagine we could have a quick 5 minutes adjournment. Yeah, yes, I confirm we'll have a 5-minute adjournment for comfort break. Thank you.
Joe.
Members, can we please now retake our seats so we can continue the meeting? Okay, thank you, members. Moving on, commemoration for the armed forces who were involved with the Falklands War. Councillor Higgins to outline the motion.
Oh. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And if I can add an extra piece on, if that's okay, Mr. Mayor, than what was written in the motion, and I hope you will agree to this and members as well. I would like to add on top of the motion here is to invite you as Mayor to write to the South Atlantic Medal Association. And I know how much that will mean to you, which maybe you will comment on a little bit later. I won't take that part away, but you did say a story to me when I put this tribute on social media about the 40th anniversary. The Falklands War remains one of the largest air and naval combat operations between modern forces since the end of the Second World War. It's one that is in very much living memory as we're sadly losing our Second World War generation. And this year marks the 40th anniversary of that conflict. And it's important that we recognise that across the borough, because it did impact people who lived, worked, and now live in the borough far and wide. Equally, with everything that's happening in the Ukraine as well, we should pay tribute to our armed forces who today are standing ready, should they be called on, and to recognise the professionalism and the readiness of our armed forces that is second to none. In 1982, the armed forces were ready within days at being called. Admiral Sir Henry Leach went to the Prime Minister and said, "We should go." And she said, "Why do you say that?" And his response was, "If we don't go, and we don't go wholeheartedly, it will be very much worse. We may be living in a different country." And he was remarking about the Cold War, the original Cold War, and we're probably in Cold War II. However, as a council as well, and I'm very proud as a Royal British Legion member and RAF Association member as well, who's worked on armed forces welfare for many years, that this council has very much recognised the Armed Forces Covenant, and in partnership with Rushcliffe and Charnwood Borough Council in 2013, we have supported our veterans in many ways, which is outlined in the paper. Just for those who may be watching as well, that this council supports the people in terms of recruitment and employment. And I know that we've guaranteed a guaranteed interview scheme for veterans and reservists, and that this council, as well as Charnwood and Rushcliffe, have recently applied for the gold standard as employer status. We offer a range of support and advocacy training, building awareness and engaging community-based groups. And we also have reviewed the allocations policy to support veterans in the borough, something I think is absolutely fantastic as well, because armed forces members do make up some of the highest percentage of homeless people. And we play an active part in supporting the armed forces in Leicestershire. About 10 to 15 years ago, the country wasn't in the same place as how it supported its veterans as it does today. And I think with the police, the NHS, and all other public sectors, they've certainly upped their game to understand those of the armed forces as well. So I request members join me to support the motion as in the order paper. Just going back to the Falklands War, I just wanted to touch on a few points. And I'll invite you later, Mr. Mayor, should you so wish, to talk about your particular story as well. The Falklands War on both sides of the conflict cost the lives of 255 people from the UK, which included civilian members on ships such as Atlantic Conveyor, and 249 members of the Argentine forces. Also, 755 people for the UK and 1,657 people were wounded in that conflict as well for the Argentines. The war lasted from the 2nd of April 1982 to the 14th of June 1982. And the difficulties that the political leaders at the time had during that conflict was not easy. In all, nearly 21,500 people were involved in the Falklands War, and they classed themselves as veterans. However, it didn't just stop there in June 1982. When they came back, the country was very much changed, and a lot of that's been documented. Argentina changed in terms it rid itself of the military junta and returned back to democracy. Democratic relations resumed between the UK and Argentina in 1990. However, probably on the Argentine side, and I don't have those figures, but I do know on the UK side, many studies were undertaken about how people suffered from what's now classed as post-traumatic syndrome, PTSD. And there are very credible reports where half of the sample group suffered from at least some symptoms of PTSD, and while nearly a quarter of those assessed had a full complete PTSD syndrome, as we now call that. Thankfully, PTSD is very much more recognised in the conflicts that we're fighting now, and that's why the Armed Forces Covenant is so important to help those people re-engage back in with their lives and loved ones. Just as a slight side, Councillor Cumbers did comment on my cufflinks today. So I do have my remembrance cufflinks on, which my late mum gave me. I'm nearly finishing now, Mr. Mayor, which my late mum gave me when I carried the Royal British Legion for Twyford District Standard at the annual Festival of Remembrance in London. There was an absolute tribute to the Falklands veterans, and I'm very proud to pay tribute to them, their families, their friends as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Higgins. Councillor Glancy.
Thank you, Mayor. I think Councillor Higgins has covered the motion extremely well, but I would just like to add a few words. Numerous members of the armed forces lived here in Melton, making the borough their home. They were called to war at the drop of a hat, and off they went to the Falklands. They carried out their duties as members of the armed forces. Sadly, some did not return, and some returned injured. Not everyone involved went to the Falklands. Some remained here in the UK, supporting various elements of the war, in particular communications, and that was mainly at RAF North Loughlam, which isn't RAF North Loughlam anymore. I believe it's important that we pay tribute to those who had laid down their lives, those who suffered injury, and recognise those families who lost ones or lost loved ones on all sides. The armed forces are a part of Melton. It's an important part that we support veterans, serving members and their families. I welcome our commitment to the Armed Forces Covenant. I'm proud to second this motion to reaffirm that commitment. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Glancy. First, we've got Councillor Orson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just to give a little bit of local flavour. Corporal Peter Fitton, born in Old Alby, moved to Goby Marwood. Born Sunday, March 10th, 1957, died Friday, June the 11th, 1982, killed in action, died of wounds. Corporal Peter Fitton died during operations on the Falkland Islands. He was part of a returning patrol from 45 Commando when they were mistaken by British forces for the enemy. He was killed along with Sergeant Robert Lehman, Corporal Andy Ewan, and Keith Phillips. This was just before the main assault on Two Sisters Falkland Islands, killed by friendly fire. It shows you what a waste war can be, doesn't it? Thank you.
So Councillor Graham.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As portfolio holder with responsibility for the Armed Forces Covenant, I'm very pleased to support this motion, but I do greet it with mixed feelings. I'm horrified to think that the thing was 40 years ago. Where has all that time gone? It feels, I was slightly involved because I have a father-in-law who's part of the war cabinet, and so we were really very involved at the time, but it doesn't feel like 40 years ago. As portfolio holder with responsibility for the Armed Forces Covenant, I am pleased to support it, but the papers in front of you explain so much, but certainly not everything we're doing for our veterans and reservists. We are also involved with cadets, and I was personally so sorry that because of COVID, I could not have done more with my mayor's cadet over the last 2 years. But what is the point of a covenant? If we all recognize that we owe the members of our armed forces a great debt for the service they have given us, it is because it gives us all our good intentions, a structure, and embeds them into our policies and our ethos. I was going to go through an enormously long list of things that I was sent by officers to explain all that we do for all those who have served. I'll save you the trouble of listening to it, though I can forward it to anyone who wants. The only message I want to get across to everyone this evening is that if you see anyone who has served their king or queen in any of the armed forces who is struggling in any way, please put them in touch with your council. We have the expertise and the will to help them any way we can. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Graham. Anybody else wish to speak? You. Okay, Councillor Hewson.
I'd just like to say I went to school with Pete Fitton, and when we used to go on the bus to school, he was all so dedicated. He wanted to be in the forces. He trained and trained and trained before he left school. That's all he wanted to do. And he's only in the next village to us. And I would all say, when you go to Remembrance Service at Godley, you do remember. We don't know about the First and Second War, but when you know people that you've lost, it does reinforce the real importance of remembrance. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hewson. I would also like to mention that I also went to school with Peter Fitton, and when his father was in the army at Old Dolby, and whenever all the kids went out to play, it always had to be army, and he was always the commando, and it was all he ever wanted to do in life. So at least he did get his wish in that way. Also, there was another lad I was at school with called Colin Smith. I believe he served on HMS Coventry in the Falklands War as well. And I believe that got hit by a missile, but fortunately he escaped without injury from that. So obviously I'm quite happy to write a letter because it does have specific meaning to myself. Thank you. Okay, right, moving on to the vote. So all those in favour of the motion, please show. Yep, that's unanimous. Okay, so that's the end of the motions. We now move on to item 10, Melton Local Plan Review.
Got to be recorded. I left the room, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Yes, I believe Councillor Lawson and Councillor Holmes are leaving the room. Okay, Councillor Bindloss with a brief introduction to the report.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Members, the local plan review. The local plan was published and launched and adopted in 2018 and has without doubt been a massive success for our borough. Our proactive approach in adopting this document has brought forth many benefits for us and is in part the envy of many others who were not so reactive in introducing their own. The plan enables us to demonstrate an enviable 11.6 years of housing supply. Allied to this is our strong housing delivery against the targets of our plan. The plan has also enabled us to leave it in around £160 million of investment in highways and education infrastructure. It has enabled us to receive more new homes bonus and serve to protect the number of developments in line with the plan. It is a requirement, however, and rightly so, that our plan is reviewed and updated within 5 years of adoption. This enables our plan to be reactive to changes both locally and nationally. As our plan is now 3.5 years old, and to comply with the requirements I've just outlined, now is the right time to embark upon the review. We should be aware, however, of the implications and risks, both of doing this and not doing it now. These are shown between pages 25 and 27, points 14.2 to 15. And it's not my intention to go through these, but I would point out the obvious, that this is a very large piece of work, and the success of the revised document will serve us well for another 5 years. This success will be due down to the diligence and the plain hard work of both officers and members alike. This is an opportunity to revise this document and improve it by addressing its frailties, things that we have learned that could be improved upon during its first 3 or so years. A review doesn't equate to wholesale rewriting and should be contained to those elements that require refreshing, updating, or changing for a variety of reasons. This is a healthy and positive exercise, and the key to the success of this work is by dialogue. And as such, a working group of members and officers will be formed and convened on a regular basis throughout the life of the revision. There will be at least 2 consultations as the review progresses, as required by the regulations, for at least 6 weeks. Following consultations, officers will then consider representations and consider if the review should be submitted for examination by the Planning Inspectorate. I understand that just writing or revising the policy is not enough. We need to make sure that the policies in the local plan are implemented through the planning application process and are monitored and enforced in the appropriate way. To enable this, the report seeks approval for a new post of planning enforcement officer. It's to be created to ensure adequate resourcing for proactive enforcement. The revised plan will continue to guide and towards the end of this decade, and will ensure that we do so in an informed way, addressing the current and future needs of our borough. Members, I therefore move the approval of 2.1, 2.2, 2.3, 2.4, 2.41, 2.42 and 2.5. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bindloss. Councillor DeBille.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm happy to second the motion that has been put. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor DeBille. Any questions from members? Councillor Posnett.
Not a question, just a statement, really. I do look forward to this review, and there are some things that we will have to make particular attention to, and they are environmental issues, obviously, which are on the increase, trying to get to carbon zero these days. But what I do welcome more than any of the other things is the position of an enforcement officer. It's one that we've needed for a while, and I'm really pleased that that has been identified as a need that we have. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Posnett. Councillor Chandler. Excuse me, your microphone. Oh, sorry, somebody's just turned it on for you.
Can you hear me now? Sorry. I led on the local plan, and I'd like to reflect on the successes and some of the things that haven't been quite so successful in it. The successes, as Councillor Bindloss has said, has been the performance we've had in the last 3 years that's given us an 11-year housing land supply, When I took over the local plan, we were struggling to get a 3.5-year land supply. So this is a fantastic achievement, but it has come at a cost. Melton Mowbray itself has had an injection of capital towards infrastructure improvements within the town, and obviously the money that's going into the much needed road. But my regrets that we are getting far too many large housings being built within our villages. To get developers to build much needed affordables and small family homes, they barter successfully to achieve 4 and 5 bedroom dwellings, which in the present economic climate, they're really struggling to sell. We as a planning authority have to make sure that we do not give way by keeping developers to building the homes people need and do not have to move to South Kesteven, Rushcliffe and Newark, as in my ward, to find properties within their budgets. This also, as the report quite rightly says, we have high rental values. You struggle in Bottisford now to rent a house under £1,000 a month. And if people are paying £1,000 a month, there is no way they can put money away for a deposit. And this is a very serious matter. It's not just in Melton, it's nationwide, but I mean, I think something we must take into consideration. The biggest failure of the existing plan is the lack of infrastructure provision within the rural areas. Infrastructure should come prior to building, not follow from years later. On Friday morning, I was preparing food for the race evening. I had no water. Severn Trent, since Christmas, have cancelled 2 meetings with this authority at very short notice, no notice or reason given. And I think this is an appalling state of affairs. There are we at the end of the line. And we have, I mean, I got up in the morning and there was a job to clean my teeth, and then it went off and then it did come back. But this isn't good enough, and you can't keep building house after house. I mean, it's not just Bottisford. We're talking about Nottingham right through to Bottisford. Every village is being built on, built on, built on. It's not just 20, it's 70, 80, 90. And we have got to do something about this. Infrastructure should come from building, not following some years later. Sadly, planning papers no longer display comments from any of the utilities. I'll try to keep this brief. A building goes on and on, whether the utilities like it or not, but we have immense problems, and I know all villages do, with lack of parking, recreation facilities, medical provision, education, green spaces no longer appear to count in the bid to build more and more houses. Central governments are guilty for taking away protected open spaces, once the pride of many villages, now subject to little boxes in their place. We've got some houses in Bottisford on a new development, and the gardens are 6 meters. 6 meters in a village. I mean, I used to have a clothesline. I had to get 30 meters for my clothesline. And these are 36 meters. I mean, it's absolutely ridiculous. In conclusion, I believe we've got to, we've got the allocated sites right, but allowing windfall development is causing untold misery to many. Most developers appear to apply for at least 10% more properties than allocated for the site. In Bottisford, we have evidence of even higher numbers than that. Sadly, neighbourhood plans have been adopted too late to curtail this practice. I rest my case. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Chandler. Councillor Bindless.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Chandler and Bosnick. I think this is going to be a very, very, very important and a refreshing thing that we can do to actually review this. And I did say that, you know, we need to look at the frailties, and I'm fully aware, as are many, that there are frailties, and we need to learn by that. I mean, we were never, ever, ever going to be able to get it 100% right in its first inception. This is something that we want to do now. This is what we need to do. And we need to do this by listening. And we need to do this with having an equal and a balanced and a transparent working group that are receptive to what is being told to them. And I think if we can do that, we will have again a plan that we can be proud of, but one that reacts and is reactive to what we learn and what we've learned over the last 3.5 actually years. Thank you.
Councillor Bindless. Councillor Evans.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Can I first of all say to Councillor Prue Chandler, you're a very, very modest person. You did a brilliant job. I can tell you, I've seen a few local plans. I went through Rushcliffe's one. You did a brilliant, exceptional job. Just because you've got a good plan doesn't always mean it comes out perfectly at the end of the day, because as you pointed out, unfortunately, there is a factor called money, and the developers will always be fighting to try and make as much money as they can on every plot. But having said that, this borough works hard and has worked recently very hard to try and maintain the standards that we as a council want in those areas. And that's the important bit, because you can never put that in print as such. It all depends on each plan. But I think we have with the chair there, someone who looks after and makes certain that the maintained standards are. The local plan needs to be updated. We've got a local plan, we're meeting it. We need as a council to realise we're ahead of the game, but that should not mean complacency. Like you've said, it's important we update it impeccably. We need to look at the environmental consequences too, which are a very important factor coming forward. But I think given the following, getting a chief planning officer back again, and I'm sorry, I don't think having one for 6 months was such a good idea. I think we need one who's going to be here and committed long-term to this council. And the one thing I would say to anybody who leads this review, be aware that it's causing some angst, as I'm sure Councillor Chandler knows, with those who've got a neighbourhood plan. Because obviously, if the local plan gets revised, it could, as Jim would say, who's no longer with us, it can trump everything that's in the neighbourhood plan if it's not careful. I've been to parish council meeting after parish council meeting, and they're all getting very concerned that any review might have an impact on something that volunteers have spent years putting together. So I think we need to consult with all of those people very early on in this process to make certain that they don't start getting very fretful about what we're going to do with this. Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Evans. Anybody else wish to make any comments? Councillor Lumley.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I've just got a bit of confusion really, and I think Councillor Evans has just answered my question actually. But 2.5, the creation of a planning enforcement officer. I thought we'd had one, because I was in touch with that person the last 2 years in my ward with several housing planning enforcement matters. So can I just have a confirmation on that that role was created, or it's been stopped, that's been recreated, or it's just wrong on here? Number two, I have to agree with the comments of Councillor Chandler. She's absolutely right. Pretty much every email I get from my constituents now is infrastructure, infrastructure, infrastructure. And just, I don't want to repeat what Councillor Chandler says, but she's absolutely right. And I have to also add that the actual level of immigration into this country is absolutely out of our control. And I think if we don't actually try to stop it soon or reduce it significantly in the years to come, we're going to have huge problems with housing and infrastructure. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Lumley. Councillor Bindloss.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I can confirm that we don't currently have an officer in that role, and that this will be new for us. We have previously had somebody, but
any other members wish to make comment? Councillor Higgins.
Thank you. Yeah. For a minute, I thought I thought Councillor Evans was crossing the floor there, but anyway. But yeah, just talking about in regards to the plan, and Councillor Chandler absolutely hit the nail on the head, because affordable housing in the rural areas is vitally important to keep those communities continuing. And we talked about a little bit earlier about antisocial behaviour and giving things for young people to do. But if you do have ghettos in rural areas, and I hear what Councillor Chandler says, is then you won't have people looking at the cricket clubs, the recreation grounds in those areas, and then building communities in those areas. And I know we've worked very hard on getting an affordable housing mix. So it's not all social housing, it's not all affordable rent, it's not all start homes, and having that mix so different avenues come to different markets for people. I did note that in the terms of reference, the membership says the members appointed to the group will be agreed by their respective group leader. But to be fair to those group leaders, they've both declared an interest and left the room. So I think to save them any embarrassment, we might need just to change that particular point, whether it's their deputies or whatever. But obviously they have decided to walk out the room. And if they then appoint the people there, it could give them, in the public perception, a little bit of a difficulty there. Just going back into where I see some of the very important parts of the evidence which will be required. And I know people who've been involved in planning for many years, either on the planning committee or as those who represent their communities. These are ones that have had a little bit of contention. And to be fair to Councillor Evans, he did raise some good points in regards to neighbourhood plans. SS3 rural settlements. SS3 rural settlements do not affect the southern rural settlements like they do in the northern area. So for example, the Twyford and Thorpe Parish Council gets very frustrated with this council, which continually recommends no housing in those villages when they want housing for their own community. But then in maybe other areas in the north where they're having lots of housing built, it's a good barrier to make sure that they don't get too many houses. So we should start looking at things a little bit more granular. EN9, low carbon development. I think Councillor Posnett mentioned that earlier. C2 housing mix. As Councillor Chandler said before, too many times do we see developers come and then they always top end it, don't they? As you said, and then this new thing that's coming, 4+ bed houses, where it's actually 3 large bedrooms and then a study downstairs, which really is another bedroom. So all that needs to be looked at. Affordable housing I mentioned before, developer contributions. That's an interesting one because the rural area is now contributing to the road in the southern rural area. And so if we take too much out of developer contributions, how are we going to afford those facilities for those young people we mentioned earlier? So we've got to look at that really, really carefully. And employment development as well. We can have all the houses that we want. If we don't have people working, we don't have those opportunities, then that's going to depress the house prices eventually. Melton shouldn't become a commuter town, I think is my point there. So we do have to have a real careful look at this. And I do acknowledge what the portfolio holder said, an equal balance working group. But I do think we do need to, in the terms of reference, we as a council, to not cause embarrassment to those group leaders who've left the room, we should address that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Higgins.
Councillor Brown, in case you forgot my name. Sorry, just a bit of a joke there. Yeah, just on this, yeah, I welcome this. But I think this council is going to have a serious discussion about social housing and social rented housing. The rent levels are extortionate in this for the income of which the average person actually earns. And I'm hoping that we as a council can start providing some of those social rented houses. So where you have plots of 4 and 5 in a village, we can maybe come in and take some of that on. But more importantly, the point that Councillor Chandler makes about the access to services and the infrastructure is really, really important. And I feel that we're going to need to, if we're going to address what's on our homelessness waiting list of the demand of 1 and 2 beds, we're going to seriously have to look at infill within Melton Mowbray or extending or taking the Section 106 sites in that. And I would welcome a discussion about that at the appropriate time with the portfolio holder within that. The point that Councillor Higgins makes about developer contributions is an interesting point, and I think we need an honest conversation with developers how much they're actually making. because the extortionate profits that do get made by some of these developers is not what they actually say to our planners when they're sitting around the table. I already have declared an interest that I work for a National Housing Association, but I can tell you when we build out that some of the profits that the private side make compared is quite significant, and we should be thinking about our people, not about the profit and the money going into developers' pockets, basically. Although I know that Councillor Higgins is quite passionate about delivering out in his villages, and maybe we as a council could come in and help those villages with taking on some of the social housing in the council from a council rented point of view. So I welcome this, but as my portfolio holder to a different portfolio holder, I would welcome a discussion with you at the appropriate time. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Brown. Yeah, you should come back quickly, Councillor Bindloss.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I welcome all of the comments that have been made tonight, and I will take them all on board, and there will be an opportunity for members to speak with regard to this directly to myself, or hopefully to others on the committee as well. And I look forward to producing, all of us producing, something that's meaningful and takes the plan to another dimension for the next 5 years. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bindloss. I'd just like to invite the Assistant Director for Governance and Democracy to clarify a couple of points.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just thought it might be useful to clarify for members the terms of reference that Councillor Higgins has raised. I think it's a valid point. However, I'm satisfied that the Constitution provides for deputies in the absence of leaders of the council. My understanding in this scenario that actually the group will be determined by one of our cabinet members. And it would, in any event, we would expect the group leaders to be aware of that. So I think that we are covered in that respect, unless any member has an issue and wishes to make an amendment to the terms of reference before the recommendation is moved and seconded.
Okay, thank you for that. Okay, any other comments from anywhere on the floor? In that case, I think we'll move on to the vote. To recommendations at 2.1, 2.2, 2.3, 2.4.1, 2.4.2 and 2.5. All those in favour, please show. Okay, thank you very much. That's unanimous. Could we invite the two members of left to come back now?
Councillor Holmes has gone home, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much. Okay, item 11, asset development program update. Councillor Bindloss again.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Members, the council agreed the ambitious asset development programme early in 2021 and approved to embark upon phase 1. This report is by the way of an update review of the approval given last year as to where we are now and how and where we need to progress, and indeed the tools we need to do so. Page 36 4.6 outlines the activities approved for phase 1, and these can be seen between 5.4 and through to 5.4.6 on this report. The grant funding from LLEP was agreed in September of last year, which has meant that there was a delay in commencing the spend on the approved activities. Work has continued with regard to the disposal of the ground at Cattle Market North. Clearly, our remit was and remains to maximise the commercial value of its site, and as such, the sale of the first 2 phases of it, which are due to commence next month. The Cattle Market South continues to develop along the lines of the master plan, with the stockyard branding being launched last week and the development of commercial units, along with a robust marketing of the stockyard and its links with the town centre and other key stakeholders. With regard to Phoenix House, the council agreed last year to explore options for redevelopment of this site. We continue to hold discussions regarding the future of the property and that of its occupants. We will continue to hold an open and transparent dialogue with all parties affected by this, which includes all those currently situated within the building, to consider positive options and alternative accommodation for businesses to continue to prosper. In addition to this, we will consider the alternatives to its sale and the retention and possible development of the site by MBC. Parkside itself has agreed in phase 1. We will continue to appraise and develop the logistics and the design of the layout of Parkside with the aim of maximising this and increasing its commercial viability. The Cove Community Centre, as per the council's approval, we will continue to explore the use of the Cove for relocating community-based services from Phoenix House and Parkside as appropriate. Work towards our community centres continues to proceed as described in 5.4.5, with a vision of supporting the communities around them. Members, we continue to have an open dialogue with key stakeholders through meetings and workshops, and we look forward to the future with regard to programmes such as our town centre vision and health and leisure, as well as submitting key funding opportunities such as the Levelling Up Fund Phase 2. All this, however, requires officer time, and we currently have a lack of capacity within this field and need now to increase this to ensure that not only will we maximise the opportunities before us, but also free up senior officer time to allow other demanding issues to be addressed. The implications of this, as outlined on page 42, 9.4 and 9.5. Members, I therefore move that the council notes and update and approves 2.1 and approves a recommendation of 2.2, 2.3 and 2.4. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bindlos. Councillor de Bell.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor, I compliment my colleague, Councillor Bindlos, and the team on bringing this paper forward. Mr. Mayor, maximising on the value of assets is not allowing them to stagnate and become a burden on the community has to be a prime objective of a progressive council seeking to work for the community it represents. I'm delighted to second this motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bell. Members, over to you. Councillor Evans.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to thank Councillor Higgins for pointing out that I actually praise people when they do a good job. On this particular subject, anybody who's been through the scrutiny process will know that there were issues, there are issues. I would like to say, as a sort of analysis of this, I would say housing a while ago was in a right mess. I'm sorry, those are the right words to use though. And thanks to a good portfolio holder and a good officer, they're now getting to a stage where we want them to be. A long way to go, I'm sure Ronan would agree, but we're getting there. On the assets, I'm sorry, we're still a bit far back because as a portfolio holder knows, we've only now just got a database that's even close to fit for purpose. And I think it's still a long way from where it should be. We really don't know what we're doing with our assets at the moment. We haven't got that enough information, and I think we need to get that. And it's a big task. It is a big task because we have, unlike some people think, and I'm looking at the portfolio, I'm the officer, we've got a lot of assets that are not being used properly, in my opinion, and we need to try and sort them out and get them into a comprehensive plan for the way forward. And that's a lot of work, because we're coming from a situation where, I mean, we didn't even know what we got, to be honest. If I asked an officer, they didn't know all their assets because it wasn't in the system. And that is not unacceptable. We're moving forward, but I think even in the scrutiny, he's not here, unfortunately, the chair, we know we've got a lot of work, years of work to get it where we want to. And that's an important task for me, because without this council knowing what its assets are doing, we can't really decide whether they're useful or whether they should be disposed of. And I think that's an important task that we now move on to and get right. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Evans. Anybody else wish to make a comment? Councillor Bindless?
Thank you to Councillor Evans. Yeah, you're quite right. We need that. And one of the things that we're outlining here is by adding extra posts, which are without question going to bring additional capacity. The importance of this is that by increasing that capacity, it frees up other officers' time to be able to look and react on other things that are equally as important. And that's always been a problem before. And it's one that I think that we'll be able to address by having this additional capacity in staffing. And I think that will make us a lot healthier and will be, as I say, be able to address these things. But it's certainly something I think I'm right in saying that was at scrutiny workshop a while ago, and it was something that was mentioned and felt that was needed action. And I think this is where we are today because of that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bindless. Yes, Councillor Pritchett.
Thank you very much. Asset rationalisation and sweating, or another term, sweating your assets, has been around in the public sector for over 30 years. I was first involved in 1991. And in many ways, in a lot of ways, it's good that the council has come late to this, because we've now had COVID and the road's approved. So there's some sort of certainty about the road. Now, to get it into perspective, we're talking probably about 35, 36 million pounds of assets. It's a very small asset base. We're not Network Rail.
Just a moment, Councillor Pritchett. Could I invite you to stand while you're making your speech?
Oh, sorry. Sorry. Sorry about that, Mr. Mayor. Sorry about that. The asset base is small at 36 million. That's basically relevant to this process. 35 items, 8 are car parks, 5 are parts of the cattle market, and 2 are the new toilets, which leaves 20 other, about 20 other items. So it's a relatively small position. The position that we're in with regarding these posts is not a cause or a problem caused by the project team. It's historical. We haven't been able to do the basics. Now, what's concerning me about this, we had a recent audit report on leased assets where leases had expired, some of them, but it wasn't necessarily a good report in so much of it gave you a snapshot, but rather it went to the audit committee, and it actually said the control environment is satisfactory. And it says it is acknowledged there remains much work to be completed to address all of the historic gaps in control, but the work to date has clearly identified those gaps and actions are underway to resolve these. Now, prior to this, I've not heard an indication that we needed more staff, right? We're in danger of 2 things here. One of them is setting this up for the future, right? And by requesting the staff over 2 years, we're going into the next council. We had the cattle market phase 2, I understand, was 2014-15, sort of an agreement that's been rolled forward. I haven't seen a business case, and quite rightly, business cases will evolve for the disposal and alternative use of assets as they come along. And so we could be setting the job up, but we could also look like be entering into a never-ending project. We've ended up at the beginning of this by taking on an asset development manager, rather than looking at the range of work we might need and buying it in, calling it in off a firm. And it looks like that we're taking on these extra people. We're going to have more valuers than a big estate agent, yet we may not have the staff to actually manage the projects. And at the end of the day, when you looked at when we took the asset development manager on, when they'd done everything that was in the job description, they'd be redundant because they'd have gone through it. And I'm unable to support this But what I'm going to do is I'm going to abstain this, and I think as chair of the audit committee, it would be a wise thing to sit on the fence with this. I'm not persuaded. And recently as yesterday, the Prime Minister said that the Conservatives offer value for money when you vote for them as councillors. And I've not seen anything like job loading calculations that actually lists all the work you need, the hours, and why it needs a year or 2 years for this sort of thing. So I shall be sitting on the fence on this one, Mr. Mayor and members. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Pritchett. Any other members wish to speak on this subject? Yeah, okay. Higgins.
Thank you, Councillor Pritchett, as well. And that's where I think the problem with this paper is. We know where we're trying to go to, but I think we're in real danger, and it's not very clear at all what the staffing arrangements are, other than the amount of money it is. And in terms of assistant value, well, what's the job description? And where's the value add? So if you're going to pay 77,000, where's the value add that the council is going to do? Which job is that freeing up, which could be used for example, do something else which could add more value back to the council? So it's very 2D, and that's the problem that I think this paper is asking of members. And while I'm broadly in support of what it's trying to do, I don't think it's actually been thought through just enough to get that support level. Because if we're not careful, as Councillor Pritchett said, we're going to be spending more and more money on officers. And then when we sell these assets, there's going to be nothing left. And that's what the problem is. And so it just seems that where's these new posts coming in? What jobs are they saving for somebody else to do? What other value added work? What is that value added work? And if I can then equate that in my own mind to 77,000, then I might be voting for it, because then that's where it's coming from. But just to ask in a few pages of that, it's not got enough detail. And there's no business case that seems to be in this paperwork here. And unfortunately, as I think some members have said before, as we're not getting the information through, and it's not the first time that some members are not getting the information through, we have to either hear about it through the Melton Times or social media or through our parish councils. I can't support this paper. So I'm not against it, but as Councillor Pritchett said, it needs to be properly scrutinised. And unfortunately, I just don't think the work is there for the request of extra staff is quite justified. It could be justified, but it needed more information to get the support, because we're just signing off a lot of money. And to be fair, what Councillor Pritchett did say, if we're not careful, we're just rolling it all the way through. And by the time it comes to the end, we go all the way to the back. How much did we spend on staffing all the way through?
Thank you, Councillor Higgins. Councillor Pritchett, as long as it's brief, as you've had your speech already. Yeah, if you're brief.
Stand up, thank you. Just to follow on again, I omitted what Councillor Higgins has said. This is a public paper, and I've sat down with professionals and they pointed out the same things. And we talked about the fact is that by the time you end up in 2 years, despite wanting to do things done, you've ended up spending £700,000 on staff, and you've got the risk here of having the perfect civil service department on Yes Minister going from 2 to 9 staff and nothing produced from it, I'm afraid. So I fully endorse what Councillor Higgins has said. He's took my reticence a stage further. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. A brief one, Councillor Evans.
Be very brief, obviously, and obviously I just need to explain that I shall also be abstaining, because I think it's very important that we bring on board ordinance scrutiny and what's this doing. And I respect greatly what Councillor Don Pritchett has said. He knows his stuff on this area. I worked with him for several years and I know he knows his stuff. And if he's unhappy, I'm unhappy. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Evans. Councillor Bindloss.
Thank you for your comments. With regard to the 76,000, that of course is over 2 years. That's not an annual payment. it's a question of empowerment, isn't it? It's a question of actually having enough capacity to be able to do jobs. Why do we want a valuer that's an assistant? Principally because that's somebody that will be able to, in the future, look forward and will be able to hopefully be able to do not only the job of an assistant valuer, but the job of a valuer. So we should be looking at this as something that we are investing in the future, not just something that is on the face of it now, exactly what it would be, which is an assistant valuer. We need to be looking beyond that. And you know, I fully appreciate that there are questions there that we need to kind of like move forward with. But one of the things that I would also say is that when we actually look at this, that this it was already agreed, and this is actually an update, is it not, on something that was agreed last year. However, in saying that, I appreciate what Councillor Higgins said with regard to exactly what that individual is going to be doing, and that's something that I can look at and respond to in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bindloss. As long as it's very brief, Councillor Higgins.
Just a point of clarification, just to the in response to the portfolio holder, if you could confirm, because this is a fixed term post for 2 years, and you were saying we've got to look for the future. So is this to come to being, so are we actually creating a post to be a valuer in 2 years' time? So it's going to be another post, or is this job a fixed term that's ending, or are we looking to recruit someone and then getting them to be a valuer, which we'll need to create another post? Thank you.
Just a moment, Councillor. I'd just like to invite Pranali to come in on this.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I can draw members' attention to paragraph 5.7.3, which identifies the 3 bullet points explaining exactly what these 3 posts are. The first one is for a fixed term 2-year contract post for an assistant valuer. This is specifically to help with the operational task of financial book valuations, which we have to do on an annual basis. That is a very operational day-to-day job, which senior estate officers do not need to get involved on day-to-day basis. And if somebody is able to help out with that, then that frees up capacity at senior level to focus on the delivery of the asset development program. So that's the first one. The second one is about a 1-year fixed legal support, which is specifically for sorting out the issue that Councillor Evans just highlighted about getting our house in order, about looking at exactly what our current leases are and updating the information to prepare the finally detailed asset register, which has been pending, as Councillor Evans mentioned, for a long time. And that is a finite job, because once it's done, you are right, that person is not required to carry on further after that work is completed. And the third one is looking forward, preparing for the delivery of these projects on ground, which will be more about capital regeneration program work. So this is in readiness for using a vacant post to uplift it to a higher level, so that that project manager can help in delivering the projects actually on ground without disrupting the actual day-to-day function for the assets team. So these are the 3 posts to deal with the current problems we as a council are facing and future-proofing the delivery of the program.
I think Pranali's answered that. Thank you.
Councillor Brown.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I can see what people are saying, but can I just clarify? My understanding of this is that this at each stage will go back to scrutiny, if I'm not mistaken, and also to be a robust business plan. So we did discuss this at cabinet briefing, and due to timing, if my memory is correct, it was decided to go to full council, back to scrutiny, and then back to cabinet with the full business cases in that order. Normally, what would happen is it would go to obviously cabinet scrutiny, full council, or scrutiny, cabinet, full council. And the reason is due to time and due to bids that have to be put in, is my understanding of things. I would just like to clarify that to all the members in the group, but I do think Councillor Higgins, Councillor Pritchard have a good point, is that we need business cases for all these issues. And my understanding is that once it comes back to cabinet, we would need to be reassured it's all signed off, and those business cases have been robustly put together, and people such as scrutiny and audit, which the chair sits on here, have both seen those. And I would certainly give reassurance that if those business cases came back and didn't stack up, that certainly I wouldn't be supporting it. But I do think we need to move on and get things moving. I think, Councillor Higgins, you've been in, while you were portfolio holder, you were advocating this and you're pushing this forward. I understand your hesitation to it, but we do need to move things forward. But could I just have clarification before portfolio holder, I am correct in my thinking of process?
Councillor Bindloss. Yes, Councillor Brown, you're exactly right. Thank you.
Councillor Rawson.
Yeah, I was going to say exactly the same as what Rob just said then, but just to remind everyone, the LGA Finance Review of 2021 said we should take the long-term strategic approach to financial planning, specific reference to asset development program, and highlighted the need to resource the program properly to make sure it's developed.
Thank you very much, Councillor Rawson. Anybody else wish to make any comments?
Yes, please, Mr. Mayor.
Very briefly.
Thank you very much, Councillor Brown, for your honesty on that one. It's not a very good way of doing it. Put a half-cut paper to the full, as I would, sorry about that, an incomplete paper, as I would say, to the full council, in the hope that we'll stick our hands in the air and vote for it, and then you'll go away and sort it out in a process that's not previously been declared to us.
Okay, thank you very much for that. Okay, as nobody else seems to be wishing to make comments, we'll move to the vote, if that's okay, to approve the motions at 2.1, 2.2, 2.3 and 2.4. All those in favour, please show. Those against and those abstaining. Yeah, okay, so there's 13 in favour and 9 abstentions, so that's carried. Thank you. Moving on to item 12. Gambling Act 2005 Statement of Principles 22 to 25. Councillor Freer.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Apologies, I was ready for a while and then I just got caught out a little bit. So this paper, I'm just going to provide a really brief introduction, which might involve me talking quickly rather than less, because I want to get the points out. Under the Gambling Act 2005, the council is responsible for preparing a statement of principles, setting out how it exercises its various responsibilities in terms of issuing premises licenses, liaising with the Gambling Commission, carrying out its enforcement functions and issuing permits for small-scale gambling, such as machines in alcohol licensed premises and registering small society lotteries. The Act places a duty on the council to develop a statement of principles that promotes 3 licensing objectives: preventing gambling from being a source of crime or disorder, ensuring gambling is conducted in a fair and open way, protecting children and other vulnerable persons from being harmed or exploited. The last statement of principles was for the period of 2019 and 2022. It's reviewed every 3 years. The draft gambling statement principles have been considered by the licensing committee and approved for public consultation, and that lasted for 10 weeks from December 2021 till February 2022. There was 1 response from the Betting and Gaming Council. And in section 2.1, the general principles, our statement refers to mandatory and default conditions. It also states that licensing authorities are able to exclude default conditions and attach others where it's deemed appropriate. They state that this section would be assisted by a clear statement that the mandatory and default conditions are designed to be, and usually are, sufficient to ensure operation is reasonably consistent with the licensing objectives. They also add this section should be clear that additional conditions will only be imposed by Melton Borough Council where there is clear evidence of risk to the licensing objectives, which is not adequately addressed by the applicant's risk assessment. This has been addressed. See, if you see section 2.1 of Appendix A, so the recommendation to council to improve the revised Gambling Act statement of principles following consultation. And if you look to Appendix A, part 2.1, you'll see paragraph 2 and 3, and they're the additions to the premises licenses that have been recommended to us. I will then move forward for the council to recommend to go forward following public consultation to approve the Gambling Act statement of principles. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Freer. Councillor Douglas.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, I would like to second this proposal put forward by Councillor Freer and would like to reiterate everything that she has actually said, being in agreement and in full support of her statements. As chair of the licensing committee, I'm aware of the need, obviously, to review this policy at this time. It's quite essential, obviously. It's legal that we do so. Failing to do so would lead us open to challenge, to legal challenge. The licensing committee here have, based at Melton Council, actually studied the paperwork last November 21 and agreed upon the further public consultation, which has now been concluded. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Douglas. Members, over to you for debate. Anybody wish to make anything? No, it appears not, so we can go straight to the vote on the recommendation. So all those in favour, please shout. That would appear to be unanimous of the members that are still here. Thank you very much. Okay, moving on to item 13, review of political balance and allocation of seats to political groups. Monitoring officer to provide a brief introduction to the report.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just wanted to apologise to members. The summary of the report is incorrect. It actually states that the recent by-election alters the political balance between the groups, but what it should say is it does not alter the political balance of the groups. Members will be aware that we're required to review political balance by legislation. 5.2 highlights that the allocation of seats has not changed. The tables in paragraphs 5.3 and 5.4 detail the calculations for political balance. And the recommendation is that members approve the political balance calculations as detailed in the report and approve the allocation of seats and note the membership of each committee. It does say as set out in Appendix A, but I understand a new version has been circulated to members and uploaded to the website, which indicates that Councillor Siggy Atherton will take the seats on audit and standards and the licensing committee for the Conservative group. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much. Councillor Orson.
I'd like to thank the monitoring officer for the introduction to that. To put it simply, it is what it is. I'm very happy to move the motion. Thank you.
Councillor Graham. Thank you very much. Right, move on to debate. If any members wish to make comment on the political balance, please raise your hands. It would appear not, so we can move straight to the vote then. For the recommended at 2.1 and 2.2. All those in favour, please shout. That's unanimous of the members that are here. Just briefly before we leave, Councillor Graham wished to make mention from the fundraiser from the other night.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I did. I wanted to thank everybody who's been so remarkably generous. We have had this tie-up with Sahachev and Horodok, and I'm incredibly grateful. We have at the moment raised £4,158, and there is a bit more to come in. And on Friday, I will go to Lloyd's Bank and probably spend quite a long time trying to work out the system, how we managed to get it to Sahachev. I would like, actually, and if possible, I'd like it minted by incredible thanks to Pat and Sarah and Becky of the catering, of the staff, the caretaking staff, who set out the room, looked after us brilliantly during it, and then have cleared up all the mess. I think, but I'd like that minted, but also just thank you all very much. It was a great success when we set off. We had no idea, Pam, with Robert's not here anymore, but what to accept. And I really thought we'd be incredibly lucky if we got somewhere near 2,000. So over 4,000. Thank you all very much.
Thank you, Councillor Graham. At that, we'll close the meeting at about 9:24.
Members, ladies and gentlemen, please be upstanding for the Mayor of Melton, Councillor Peter Faulkner.